All right, good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to everyone here and out there in television land. So welcome to the March 2025 edition of the Garden State Java User Group. And so without further ado, let's get going here. It's a beautiful day, I wanted to say. It's probably about 70 degrees Fahrenheit here in central New Jersey. So, of course, our usual agenda, right? Thank our sponsors, talk about what's new. Then I'll introduce Andres, and then he'll do his talk, and then I'll be back for the last slides as well. So, all right, our gold sponsor is Payara, and they do application server. They have their cloud offering. They have their Payara microserver and their normal application server interface. So, and then, of course, Azul is our silver sponsor. DevNexus, which that reminded me, I think that was last week, right?
Yeah,
So,
this happened last week.
They're our partner, and our per meeting sponsors is JetBrains, Jakarta EE or the Eclipse Foundation, and Romanelli's Pizza, which is a short 5-minute ride from here, and we welcome them as a per meeting sponsor. So we thank them for that. This is pretty much brand new. Our memberships are the Jakarta EE ambassadors, the Microprofile Working Group, the Jakarta EE Working Group, and the Virtual Jug. All right, we're part of this Future Directions group, basically that brainstorms ideas for Jakarta EE 12. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. We're also part of the Jakarta EE ambassadors, and I'm sure you've seen this slide 100 times if you come every month. All right, so what's new? We had DevNexus last week, right? And Barry, myself, Andres, we were all there. Chandra was there. So we had presentations by all of us there. Barry teamed up with Richard Fitchner. They gave a great demo on IoT. Andres, you gave a talk on what you're going to speak about tonight and Java tools, I think.
Testing.
That's it, testing. That's what I said, right? So Chandra gave a talk on Maven 4, and I talked about Jakarta EE 11. We also participated in the Java User Group Leaders Summit and also the Java Champion Summit, which were held on the same day. So a lot of good information from that. A lot of the user group leader discussion was Java and education, and we're very involved with that. All right, then I mentioned we did a podcast a couple of months ago. Well, Payara did one with the Torino Jug in Italy. So that one is available to listen. And so I have not listened to myself yet, but Payara is going to be doing these every couple of months. JDK 24, next Tuesday, will be the official release date. And it kind of corresponds with this thing called Java 1, which is on the day 1 of that's the same day. So, of course, you've seen this 100 times, the 24 JEPs that are part of the release. The release schedule, so the final one there is March 18th. Jakarta EE 11, I've mentioned this before, but the core profile was released in December. The web profile, according to rumors, is on the verge of being released. Glassfish Milestone 10 has passed the TCK for that. And then an update on that, the platform itself may not be available until the second quarter. Jakarta EE 12, and I mentioned the Future Directions interest group. There's already 3 plan reviews for 3 of the specs. That would be CDI 5, Faces 5, and Jakarta Data 1.1. And I'm sure there'll be more, but you know, this is just very beginning of the process. They are still saying that they want a 2026 release of Jakarta EE 12. So stay tuned for that. All right, these are the finalized specs for, there's 16 of them for Jakarta EE 11. And that's my random drawing application that everybody is welcome to play around with. So I've discovered something new, by the way, to do the random drawing. And yeah, so we got Andres here with us. If you remember, Andres was with us when we were still virtual. I gave a talk at least 2 or 3 years ago, I think. So for me personally, I think Barry was the first time we met you in person at DevNexus last week, so that was cool. And let's need my glasses here. So Andres is a Java Groovy developer, a Java champion, with more than 20 years of experience in software design and development. He has been involved in web and desktop application development since the early days of Java. Andres is a true believer in open source and has participated in popular projects like Groovy, Griffin, and DB Unit, as well as starting his own projects. He's a founding member of the Griffin framework, the Hacker Garden community event, and the creator of JReleaser. So I always keep track and I always report on any releases on JReleaser. So, which a new one was 1.17 just a couple weeks ago.
The last day of February 28th.
Okay,
February,
yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, awesome. So without further ado, Andres, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so
Take
much,
it away.
Mike.
Yeah.
All right. So
Turn on screen sharing again. Okay.
yes. So we shared desktop. Wake up. All right. And let's look at the slides. Oh, wait, okay. There we go. All right, well, thank you very much for joining on Tuesday. I think the user group had recently another meeting, right? I think so. Was it? Yeah.
It was February.
In February.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so we go. Perfect. Mistaken. So the topic that I have for you today is called Going Beyond ORMs. And who likes to work with ORMs? Yeah, exactly. Just a few hands. Cool. It's not necessarily that you hate to work with ORMs, but the whole point of this talk is to showcase a feature that may be used in conjunction with ORMs. And depending on the use cases, you may want to use it exclusively for that or alongside with the ORMs, right? Okay, so my name is Almiray. I'm a senior principal product manager working at Oracle. One of the things that I like to do, like Mike said, I've been working with open source for my whole career, but as an active producer of open source, it's been like 18 years now. So I think I know a few things about how to do it, but I'm still learning, and I like to share how to do things. So that's basically why I'm here. I came to the United States last week for the DevNexus conference, and I stayed here one extra week, this one, to tour around different cities. This is my second stop. Yesterday I was in Columbus. Tomorrow I'm gonna go to Boston, and there's 2 other more stops, and then I'll go back to Switzerland, where I live. All right, so enough of that. So for today, let's start with what is the current state when we are working with relational data. Then we switch gears into documents because, well, we have SQL and NoSQL. And then we'll try to figure out a way if it's possible to combine both of them. And I'll showcase one feature from the Oracle database known as the JSON Relational Duality Views, and then go into a little demo. Feel free to stop me at any time if you have questions. And I'll try to make this interactive as possible. Okay, so I'm going to talk briefly about the Oracle database itself, because the actual feature that I'm going to showcase for now is exclusively found in the database, but it's our hopes that other database vendors will look at what we're doing and take it on and also implement their own way, and maybe in the future becomes a part of the SQL standard. But for now, it's only Oracle. So one of the things that I like about the Oracle database is not just because I'm saying this because I'm an Oracle employee, is this. As a developer, if I need to write an application that consumes different data formats, it's likely that I'm going to select a product for a given database vendor to do that particular format, and then the other format, another format. So it's a bunch of products that I will have to mash together and have them talk to each other at the application level. We can do this. This is not much of a problem because we know how to do this, but you have to learn about one specific product, how to install it, how to configure, and how to use whatever query languages they use to obtain the data, And then you do the same thing for the second and for the third, right? So if it would be possible to store all these different formats inside the same database engine, then that would be better. Oracle is not the only one that does it. This is known as the multi-model approach. Postgres does it, SQL Server does it, MySQL does it, even Mongo does it. Now, we like to call ours the convergent database. And basically allows you to store all these different formats that you see on the screen on the same database engine. I believe Oracle is the one that gives you the most formats under the same engine. Now, you could create like a JSON projection. So you can project JSON properties together with relational columns alongside a graph or spatial or even a vector, because the whole point of having all these different things together is that they're exclusive to that format. It makes sense to store that in that format, but there is some semantic relationship among the different things that I just explained. If you want to do this again at the application level, there are so many moving parts that you have to put together. But in this case, you can query all of them together in one single query with just one single SQL statement, and that's great. Other things that the database has is, well, you can talk to the database using pretty much all kind of languages. Obviously, we would prefer to use JVM languages here in the Java user group. We also provide free command line tool called SQL CL. We provide a desktop application, SQL Developer, and there is also a web version that you can use on the browser and or as a VS Code extension. So there's plenty of things to use to see here, and all of them, all the things that you're seeing here in this slide are pretty much free. Not necessarily open source, but definitely you can use them for free without any restrictions. All right. So let's set the stage for when we're working with relational. So I guess most of you are very familiar with this. It is said that our job as software developers is pretty much grabbing data from a data source and then painting pixels on the screen. And we just like to make things a bit more complicated than that, and we provide frameworks and stuff in between just to move these pixels around. So here I have a set of pixels. We are defining a model for a very basic conference application. And we can have as many domain entities. We'll start with just 3, the attendee, the session, and the speaker. We'll expect these domain entities to have some sort of relationships among them. And once we have the definition of model, we can put that down into a relational model. So there will be a relational table for each one of these entities. There's a table that allows to map the many-to-many relationship. The property of each domain will be mapped to different columns in the tables. And because we have relationships, we also have to have the primary keys and the foreign keys and all those things. We know this by heart. All right. So the good thing about this is that, well, SQL has been with us for what? Close to 40 years. It's kind of like a well understood. All database vendors know how to optimize queries. Even if we write something wrong on the not so efficient, the database model or the engine can do better things than that. There's lots of tools that allow us to talk to the database using SQL to rearrange it. We have database migrations. There's a bunch of things. That's great. The bad thing about this is that it would be a good idea if we can get the model right on the first try. That is, if we don't, we will have to probably come up with solutions such as database migrations and figure out if the application is already running. And we don't want to have our customers have some sort of downtime. We want to provide uptime as much as possible. So we have to be careful when doing these things. We have to define the schema from the get-go. There's a lot of effort that we have to do in order to get the model right. So, well, of course, we can do this in an iterative phase while we're still doing development, but once you go into production, things are like set in stone, and it's a bit harder to move. Yes, you can, but it's costlier, and so on, and so on, and so on. Okay. So say that we wanted to display like a card like this one, when we grab the data coming from all these different tables. For each one of those, we'll have to issue a single query, grabbing the catalog for the speaker and the catalog for the sessions and everything else, and then just putting everything together. Now, ideally, it would be much, much better that we can issue just a single query that grabs everything that we need for that particular use case. Now, from where? Where there will be a set, again, from all these tables. And it may be the case that we want to grab just a subset of the properties, the columns for a given table. We don't need to grab everything. So if we want to do this, so grab subsets using SQL, then we have to list every single column. And we have to, again, at some point, we have to compose all these things. There's a lot of queries, blah, blah. Doable, yes. But it would be better if we can just use it with just one. So what if we were to turn it around and look into documents and JSON? Now, remember that we started with just 3 domain entities. We can look at a document whose root will be the attendee domain entity. And as a nested set of elements, we can find the session and the speaker. If we do this, then we can rearrange the data that we are storing in a relational way, where we can have a look at here on the other side. This is a JSON document that contains the same data. And as a matter of fact, we're looking at the speaker in this case. The speaker property appears to be as if it was a property of the session object. So what we're doing is we're lifting properties of a deeply nested element to its immediate parent. So this is one of the possibilities that we can have, again, from the same basic tables. But it's not the only thing that we can do, because JSON allows to create the schema in any way that we deem necessary, such as this one, for example. Same entities, but now the session is the root of the document, and both the speaker and the attendee are at the same level. So when we look at the entities in this way, now we have documents that contain this information. Same information, but the shape of the document is different. Or we can even do this. We can have the speaker be the root of the document, and then just grab information about the session that belongs to that speaker. We are not looking at the schedule. We're not looking at the attendees. We just only care about what is going on about the speaker and the session. And again, the documents look like that. So this is the advantages of the document approach, that we can come up with all kind of variations of shapes of the same data. We can do anything with the schema. We can grab as much of as little as possible as needed. And if our consumer, in this case, will be the mobile app or a browser, can just read the document as is, they can grab all the properties they need and then just put it directly displayed on the screen or fill out the form. We don't have to supply as many queries to get this done. This is here. There's a document that contains all the data that you require for this screen. Off you go. You decide how you want to render these things out. All right. So the good thing is that, well, we are quite flexible. We can move the data around. We can rename the properties from the JSON document that may or may not match the same names of the columns. We can rearrange the elements and put something at the root or put something deeper into a nested level or bring it one level up. It's up to us to decide how we do this thing. So we have plenty of freedom. But you may have noticed that if we're doing this, some of these JSON documents, because we are, these documents are human-friendly, there may be some repetition on the data. And if we're coming from the relational way of seeing things, repeated data is bad. We should be normalizing stuff. So someone would probably have told you, you're using documents and you have duplicate data, you should start looking at normalizing your documents. Please don't. And I'll show you why. Here, we start with a simple document like that. And there will be, if you look at the schedule for that particular attendee, there may be duplicate sessions for, there may be duplicate teachers for different sessions or the room or is the time and whatnot, right? So we want to remove this kind of duplication. What do? We start to extract from that single document multiple fragments and start adding IDs and reference, such that what used to be one single simple document, easy to understand by humans, now is a bunch of JSON documents that are fragments and easily understandable by a computer. Yes, but for us, not so much. And this is a trivial example. When you start to deal with real production data, these documents will grow very, very big. And would you like to deal with all these different references and start? No, no, please don't.
So Andre?
Yes.
We had a question from YouTube, or not a question, a couple of comments, and I think this had to do with your hierarchy examples. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
So I just caught this. So Dimitri says this approach might be useful if we only need to deliver data to the client, but usually we do something else with the data before handing it over to the client. And then the second comment was marshaling is not the most resource intensive process. Of course, it all depends on the complexity of the graph.
Right. So those two things those two concerns will be addressed shortly. But thank you very much for supplying those. Because right now we're looking at if we were to use just documents, and we still have that mindset of not duplicate data, then normalizing documents will be kind of like the natural thing to do. I'm saying is that we probably should not be going that way and keep the documents as they are, even with all the duplicate data as it is, because that is how the clients, the consumers, are going to deal with the documents. All right. So when documents are normalized, the simplicity that they inherently have is completely lost. And as a matter of fact, when we look at these things, when we have all these different JSON fragments, they look very much like the POJO classes that we usually have in Java-based ORMs, where we map a POJO or a document to its corresponding table. So we're just switching from using one format into another, but we are not gaining anything in simplicity. It is basically the same complexity. We just represented the data in a different way. Okay. The good thing about documents is because there's simplicity and because you can move the schema in any way you deem necessary, you can start very fast. You have a lot of speed, you have a lot of velocity to get going with your application. But when the application continues to grow in complexity and you have more and more data, then you probably will feel like these documents are dragging you down. The adding new features and fixing things gets much, much harder as you go. All right. Whereas in SQL, there is a lot of effort that we have to put up front to get things right. So there is a lot of things that we have to do beforehand. We can actually start to feel productive. But when the application grows in complexity, when we have more data, then things actually usually work much better. So we're paying forward for the benefits that we'll get later. So is there a way that we can get a balance within these two? Is there a way that we can, if needed be, start with the JSON documents, and then anytime that you feel necessary, you switch over and do relational in such a way that you don't duplicate the data? But I mean duplicate the data is that you don't store it in two different formats. It's just somehow magically you can switch from one to another. As a matter of fact, at any point in time, you could continue to switch between the formats. It doesn't mean that once you have switched from document to relational, you cannot go back. You should be able to continue to use documents if it's required for a particular set of use cases within the same application. So what we're proposing is that there should be a way to use these two formats together, but not one versus the other, right? So it's not a matter of either or, but when you want to use one or the other, or the two of them at the same time. So it's a plus. It's not an either or. This feature is known as a JSON relational duality view. And basically what we are envisioning is that you can use both of them, those two formats, if you need to be at the same time. And we store the data just once, in one way. And you can continue to access it in either of the two formats. You can use documents, you can use relational. It's not a problem. How do we do this? Well, to begin with, the storage format is relational. Do you remember what I said about working with relational models at the beginning? It's a lot of effort, right? So you can start very easily. There is what was it? The SQL standard was updated in 2016 to add the JSON type finally. So now every database vendor that supports that particular version of the standard can do it. And the most basic way that you can have relational and a JSON document or a JSON in the same model is add one additional column of type JSON. And in there, you can store the whole document. And as you continue to grow in your use case, you can grab properties from that document and move them as relational columns if needed be. Why would you like to do this? Because you have indexes in relational, but you don't have indexes in JSON documents. Yes, Scott.
Oh, but,
Scott has a question.
If you insist.
I insist.
Does the schema need to be consistent between rows of the JSON columns?
No, it's completely free.
Okay, it's not like you're enforcing a schema across different rows.
No. So whatever you store as a document in that JSON column can be anything you want to.
Okay.
Doesn't necessarily, and it depends on the specific use case that you have. So you are in charge. It's not the database that will force you to use a particular set of things.
Does it at least validate that it is JSON?
Yes, you know that it's JSON because that's the type of the column. All right. So we start, it's as easy as that we can put JSON onto columns, or we start with 100% relational model, or it's a combination in between these two things that I just mentioned, because this is how the flexibility of the database, the database will let you. But say that we start with 100% relational columns, all right, to begin with. However, the access format for grabbing data could also be the document. And you may be saying, well, this is nothing new. We're just providing a one-time view as a JSON document from relational data. So if you ever just want to read data and visualize it as JSON, this is not really groundbreaking, isn't it? What may be groundbreaking is that if you supply a JSON document and try to do an insertion in the database, or do an update also as an incoming JSON document, or do a deletion. So someone has to break down that JSON document, do some sort of mapping, and see that those JSON properties and nested objects map to relational columns and relational tables, right? Well, that particular the responsibility is the JSON relational duality view, which is basically what we have here. We have two formats to define views. One is JSON, which is quite verbose, and personally, I don't like it, but it has its advantages. And the other one is using GraphQL. This does not mean that there is a web server in the database that understands GraphQL and does everything. No, this is just for the syntax. All right? So a definition like the one that we see on that side of the screen can touch several tables at the same time with different columns and is capable of producing a document that looks like this. So this is when we just do a read. But this, if we provide a document like this one in this shape, matching the mappings that are defined on that GraphQL definition, then we can also do insertions, deletions, and updates. So breaking down what the definition we see here in GraphQL, to begin with, we have a series of tokens, the keywords, create JSON duality view, name as attendee. You may notice that that is not a big keyword like JSON duality view in just one big keyword. Why? Because we started with this feature for supporting the JSON format, but in the future, it may be the case that we can do the same thing for XML documents, or YAML, or any other kind of text document that makes sense to do this. But for now, we're using JSON because JSON is ubiquitous for the web. It's almost pretty much the lingua franca when you want to talk within clients and servers, microservices, and whatnot. So this is why the reason why we do this. What appears in orange are the names of the tables. And this particular JSON relational view is able to query 4 tables in just one go. So we can visualize all these 4 tables. So those are the links to each one of the matching the table names. The next thing will be the properties that we want to expose. So we will select which columns for a given table will be mapped to a JSON property in the document. For the root object, in this case, from the attendee, we're grabbing 3 columns, the ID, the name, and the company. There is a little bit of simplification here that if the name of the column is the same as the name of the property you want to expose, then you can say just one thing. So for the case of name and company, we could simply have said name and no column and nothing more. The same goes with company. In the case of the ID, we have to say these things explicitly because root objects must have an underscore ID element. This is one of the constraints that the JSON relational duality view has. The next one is when we are defining relationships. So we have a relationship within the attendee and the session. This is the attendee sessions table. We have annotations like add, delete, and insert, and add update. What's happening here? Whenever someone gives me a document that starts with an attendee and matches this particular shape of the data, and they say, for example, I'm going to do an insertion, so then it's going to insert a new attendee, and the session object should already exist, and what it's going to do is insert the relationship in the table within the attendee and the session. If I say I want to update, and I add more elements in the array of sessions, then what's going to happen is that the relationship within the attendee and the set of sessions will also be updated. But if I say delete, and it's a match, then I'm going to delete the attendee and cut the relationship between the attendee and the sessions. But the sessions remain, because those sessions may be used by some other attendee. So this is only for how we want to deal, how we want to handle the different relationships among the entities. And the last thing is this other annotation called unnest, which is the one that will allow us to grab the properties of a nested object and move them one level up. So in this case, the speaker name will be seen as if we were a property of the session. So we have the freedom of move around properties and objects. Again, we want that capability of defining the document in any way that we need necessary. So we pretty much end with a document that looks like this based on the mapping view that we saw before. We can query these things using SQL or document APIs. You may notice, let's go back to the definition of this thing. This JSON duality view called attendee schedule. And this here, okay, I use a different name here. It's a student underscore schedule. That's a typo. That should be the view. You may see this column called data. This data column is kind of like a synthetic thing. That is the representation of the document that you are looking at. So when the view creates the document, you can reach to it using the data column. So name will be the first property of the root of your document, which will be the name of your attendee. All right. Most of the things that we have seen is that many people, what they do is that when they create applications like REST applications that look like this, the client side already creates documents that are the right shape they want to deal with. They know exactly what they want to do with this particular thing, right? And for them, would be ideal to just grab that document and just send it directly to the database and store it as is without any intermediate processing, which is what Alexander or Dimitri mentioned on YouTube. This is the case that if you don't need any intermediate processing of the data, then just send it directly to the database. There's no need to, from the client side, send it to Spring Boot or Jakarta or Quarkus or Micronaut, whatever, to translate that into POJOs in Jackson. Now you have a graph of objects. You do nothing with that, and then just convert that back into a JSON document and send directly to the database. Why did we do this two-way translation? There's no point, this marshaling. And if we just have the data as it is in the database as a document, and we want to send it directly to the client, why do we need to grab that, transform that into an object graph, to use Jackson again to transform what used to be a document back into another document? It really doesn't make any sense if we're not doing any intermediate processing or changing information within this particular query. So if that is the case, then we can simply get data from the client and from the database and send it to the client, or from the client, we can put or post data to the database. So we do a post, that's create a new entity. We do a put, is going to update the entity. We do a delete, is going to delete the entity, right? Now, someone has to put a REST endpoint here within the application and the database. That someone can be us. We can do that easily or somehow easily using the previously mentioned frameworks, so Springboard, Micronaut, Quarkus, Jakarta, all those implementations. There is another tool provided by Oracle called ORDS, Oracle REST Data Services. It's a free web app that you can put on front of your database. And this one already knows how to expose your database through REST. There's no worries with security, because obviously we can take care of that. But basically, once you have that, then you can send as many HTTP verbs with documents to those REST endpoints, and it should work out. As a matter of fact, ORDS and the database will expose the endpoints via, I think if it's not Swagger, it's OpenAPI. So you should be able to get the definition of all the payloads and all the different REST endpoints. All right. But if there are too many clients, customers connecting to these endpoints, at some point, someone will try to write at the same time or affect the same tables. Someone has to deal with that complexity. Well, by we, I mean the database already knows how to do this. We provide optimistic concurrency control settings for this, so you don't have to worry about this. If something happens, something happens that someone tries to write at the same time, what is going to happen? Eventually, one of these requests is going to fail with an exception, with a problem. You can handle that. It's not that the data is going to be written in a bad way. So that's not a problem.
So, Andres?
Yes.
So Dmitry Takomarov made another comment. He goes, I see you integrated a JSON marshaler into the database. And if we're talking about performance, one of the popular solutions, including for microservices, is protobuf and similar.
Yes. We are using JSON again because it's more ubiquitous than protobuf. And it's a JSON marshaler in a way, yes. So yes, the incoming format is JSON document, and the database will break it down into its constituent parts so that we can do the proper SQL statements and affect all the different tables that may or may not be part of that document. So yes, it's kind of a marshaling format. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right. So for this to work, we need a particular version of the database. Now, the good thing is that obviously this thing already exists. The latest version is called 23 AI, and because at some point AI has to make it into the scene, right? Well, guess what? There's a version of the database called Oracle Database Free. The first version of this database was posted in April of 2023 as an early access. Here's a QR code for the URL, and every other page that has a QR code like this, you can navigate to that. This was the first time the company did something like this. Put out a version of upcoming product in the hands of developers first, before everybody else, we developers had it. Then in May of last year, pretty much 1 year after we had the chance to do early feedback, it was released as a GA, right? So this particular version of the database you can download for Linux and for Mac, and you can use it in development, you can use it in testing, you can use it in production for free. And since November of last year, you can also use it on computers that have an ARM chip. So we cover Intel and we cover ARM. All right. There is a version of the database on the cloud called Autonomous Database, which you can also use. It's a managed service. Let's see some hands. Let's see who uses the Oracle Cloud. Yeah. Who uses Microsoft Azure? Some hands. Google Cloud? A few hands. Amazon? Yes. So if I said to you 2 years ago, in order to use this amazing product, the Autonomous Database from Oracle, you have to switch to the Oracle Cloud. Someone may or may not have switched, but they would prefer to stay with the cloud provider they have, right? But nowadays, today, I can say, oh, you want to use this product, and you're using Amazon? Sure, we run it, and Azure, and Google Cloud. And obviously, we continue to use Oracle Cloud. So no matter which one of these cloud providers you're dealing with, you can use a managed version of this software. Or the main thing it does, it automates the menial tasks that you have to do in order to administrate the database. So yes, it can automatically create indexes for you, depending on the usage. And it can do a lot of things for you that you don't have to think about twice, of upgrades, downgrades, all those things the database knows, and they will do it automatically. So you just concentrate on doing what you need to do, which is work on the solution, and just make your customers happy. Just have to sign up for the Oracle Cloud Free tier. This is, believe me, it's always free. It has a bunch of services you have access to: compute instances, ARM, Intel, a load balancer, a few there. These resources will always be there. You just have to check which ones are available. Yes, Scott.
Oh, Scott. Scott has a question.
Do you need a credit card in order to sign up for the free tier?
You do need a credit card to sign up, but only to verify that you're a human, because we don't want crypto miners. But we won't charge your credit
Miners
card.
aren't human?
We don't want the bots.
Okay, all right.
We won't charge your credit card. Okay, I'm almost done with this and we turn into the demo. You can also run this database on a container. There is a container for the autonomous database and another for the free database. These are defined in the official Oracle Container Registry. This image, the last one, free, takes about 9 gigabytes to download and starts in about 3 minutes, which is nice. It's okay when you're doing production, but not so very nice when you want to do testing. Just 3 minutes for every test that you want to start with a new instances. That's nice. But we have options. There is another set of images coming from that place, GVensel OCI Oracle Free, with a version 23. And these ones take 900 megabytes to download and about 10 seconds to bootstrap. That's pretty good. In comparison, Postgres starts in 1 second. Still room for improvement, but I mean, 180 seconds versus 10 seconds. Come on, that's definitely a lot of improvement. And again, this is only for version 23 and onward. So this is where we're going to continue post newer versions. The latest version of the database is 23.7, released 1 week ago. This image was updated last Sunday, very, very quickly. If you, for whatever reason, you need to run previous versions of the database, there is another set of images, also very small and start up very fast, from Oracle 11 to 21. And this and that image, they can continue to be used on development, on testing, and on production for free. All right, but before I jump into that, you may be looking at, who's that GVensel guy? Is this some rando guy from the internet that's gonna hack you because you're using his images from Oracle? That guy's my manager. He works for Oracle. So it's fine. And as a matter of fact, these images are consumed by Spring, by Micronaut, by Quarkus, by Hibernate, and Vertex, all these open source projects and integrators. They use these images to test out their support for Oracle products. So if it's good for them, it definitely should be good for you as well. All right, so now we can run into the next thing, which is test containers. I will hope that most of you, if not all, know what test container is. Does anyone here does not know what test container is? Great. I will go quickly with this thing. As you may see, it has test and containers. So it's something that is built for testing, and it has to do with container technology. Basically, it's a library that allows you to bootstrap a container for any kind of software before a test case starts. And once the test case is, once the container is ready, then your test case, JUnit 5 based, will do its thing. And whether the test is successful or not, red or green, then we need to reclaim the memory, continue with the life cycle, and test containers will do that. So it manages everything for you. It's just, think of it as a way to run containers before something has to happen. And that something that has to happen is basically a test case. Okay. There are many modules that are related to test containers that allow you to run many different kind of software. So if you need Kafka or RabbitMQ or any other thing, there's bound to be a module for that. There is a module for Oracle Free and a module for Oracle XE, such that you just have to configure one dependency in your build file, maybe in Gradle or what have you, and then you have access to a new class. In this case, is the Oracle container. You point it to a given Docker image, you start the container, you're good to go. Okay, so now we can do the demo. We can jump into the actual thing. So what I have here This is a Micronaut application, and I'm pretty sure that if I ask you the question here, I will get a different answer. Who uses a Spring Boot? Okay. Who uses Jakarta EE technologies implementations? A few hands. Okay. Quarkus? Micronaut? Some Helidon? Okay. Good. So what I like about these frameworks is that they provide almost the same behavior. Different names for the annotations, different base classes. But if you know how to use one framework, and if you need to migrate or understand how the other framework works, it's not that difficult, so that you can do a translation of your knowledge from one framework to the other. So if I showed you Micronaut data, then yes, the names and annotations may be a bit different, but it should be easily to map to Spring data or Jakarta data. So what I have here in this application, I have a bunch of domain classes. I have class, student, student class, a teacher. These are domain entities. This domain entity here for a student, this could be seen perhaps as one of those entities that we saw in the slides. This will be the attendee perhaps, where we have some properties. Again, there's an ID that has a generated value, and some properties will eventually be mapped to some columns. This student has a relationship to a class, could probably be renamed first. The class has also some properties, and it has a many-to-one relationship to a teacher, and the teacher is as simple as just 2 properties. So nothing really groundbreaking here. For each one of these domain entities, we have repositories, which are similar to what you see in the Spring data and Jakarta data. These repositories give you the basic capabilities to do CRUD operations, and you can define your custom finders as well. So there's a finder for the class, a finder by name that is inside a list of names. There is more things. Now, before I show you the student repository, I also want to show you the schema. Very simple, very trivial. It's just 4 classes with relational columns. And each one of those relational columns will eventually be mapped to the properties that we saw in the domain entity. Okay. And now, I'm going to show you the JSON relational duality views. This here, the first one, I'm going to move that away. This is the JSON format to define a JSON view very similar to what we saw in the slides. Now, as you can see, it's way more elaborate. It takes a while to get used to that particular format. What is interesting about this one is that the GraphQL is pretty much fixed, whereas this one could be a bit more generic. I mean, not generic, more dynamic, because we're actually using select statements to graph information. So we can use JSON functions. We can use whatever JSON exposes here to generate the mapping. We can have a little more dynamism here if needed be. But the cost is, the price that you have to pay for this is that it's more syntax that you have to write. Now this view here in JSON is pretty much the same here in GraphQL. This is more readable, but this is static, this is fixed. Here, we will create a new JSON duality view, starting with the student as the root. We have 3 properties of the student, and then we map it to a set of classes or array of classes. For each one of the classes, we will allow insertions. That means that when I insert a document that starts with a student and I have a bunch of classes related to it, I will insert in the relationship. But if I do an update, that's not going to happen. What's going to happen here is here on the class object, we can unnest and we can update. And the teacher, we're also unnesting, which means that these 2 properties will be seen as if they were part of the class object. And we're using unnest here because we want to have a list of class objects. If this wasn't the case, they would have like 2, we have an array with an array of a single class object. That doesn't make any sense. It's better just an array of class objects. This is the reason why we're doing this here. All right, now I can show you the repository. Why I'm using a repository? Basically, because the repository class already knows how to talk to the database, and there happen to be errors in the connection or in the queries or in translating of the data, then the plumbing of the framework knows how to deal with all these problems. So I'm latching on a standard CRUD repository that's available exposed by Micronaut data, and I can create as many finders as you can in the other kind of data, as Spring data and Jakarta data. And I'm going to show how we can make use of that JSON relational duality view to find elements. Say, for example, I want to find one student, and that will give me the whole document, including his classes and the teachers. When I query a student by ID, and I'm using SQL API here, well, the SQL format, to look into the information that is exposed by that document here. We're using the data column to match the ID of the root element, because the student is the root. And we do the same thing for the name. The name of the property is different because that's what we define in the GraphQL view. We can find all the documents and just return an iterable, or it could be a collection or a list, but return just iterable. And notice that the return type of that is a string, because what we're getting back from the database is the document itself. We're not getting a student object. We're not getting a graph of Java objects. We're just getting the document as is. As a matter of fact, we're supposed to get this, the content, the document itself. Here's a query for deleting. Here's another query for finding. We're applying the max function on the value that is coming from the JSON document, which we're casting as a number. So the max number will do the thing. If we don't cast it as a number, then the return value from this average grade from the document, what type is it? JSON, the default is string. So that we can do these kind of things because the repository classes allow us to define any kind of queries we want. Additionally, and just to show that it's possible, not necessarily that you would like to do this, I have two update statements where I use the JSON transform to read the information as a document and then do a transformation of just a particular fraction of that document and then store it back. So what is actually happening? The JSON view says, oh, you want a query? I'm going to use SQL under the covers. This is what the view does, the mapping, and give you a document. You modify that document, and now you want to store it. So eventually that document has to break down again into SQL statements. See, this is not very, doesn't sound very performant, right? A little bit pointless to just update one thing, but it's possible. Here's another thing you could do. I'm going to insert a new document, but the catch here, instead of just supplying the document as it is, coming from the client as it requires it, the document that the client is sending me is different. The array of classes that is supplied from the customer, from the client side, is just the names. It should be an array of class objects with all the properties that the mapping defines. So what this code is doing at the database level is expand on that array of names, look up all the matching classes, and then modify the incoming document to insert the class objects. And now the document is as it should, and it can go directly into the database. We can do this at the application level, which is what Dimitri said. So if we need to manipulate the data in between, how we would do this? We can ask JPA or Hibernate to grab all the classes, then look at the incoming object and see how we can do the match the relationships, construct the actual student object, and then send that to the database, right? We will have to do the same thing in dealing with JSON at the application level. Or we can do it at the database level. Once again, this is not something that you should be doing all the time, but it's just to showcase something that could be done depending on your use case. What would be the use case? That the client already has a set of documents that cannot be changed, the format, and we have to deal with those. But our mapping is done in a different way because it provides support to other use cases. So instead of having two different duplicate mapping definitions for these two different documents, we have just one. All right, I think we're good to go. I need to start the database. So I'm going to use external database. So here I have Podman. I'm going to start this container, which starts pretty fast. I think that this database runs in 10 seconds and then we're done. Now I can start the application. So this application goes here, connects to the database. And there we are. The database is ready. Cool. Now I'm going to look into the README because I have a handful of queries that I can use directly. Let's look here at this. Add a new terminal, and then let's do this big. We issue this query, and we get a list of JSON documents. We can make it nicer if we pass this through JQ. And let's look at one of the students. The last student is this one, student number 4, whose name is Dallas, and average grade is 9.8. That has a list of classes. And we can see the teacher is right there alongside the class author. All right. This, we can also look at in the, when we connect using SQL CL. We can use queries here. Let's see, connects. Come on, don't let me down. There we go. I can say select. Does it look all right all the way to the back? Okay, select start from a student. And it's the same JSON data. So there's student number 4. Let's change that. Update a student, set name equal Jersey, where ID equals 4. Whoop. What are they? Up. Update. Wait. Did I type something? Hold on a second. My brain is malfunctioning right now. That's the way they should write a update statement, right? No. So it should be. Okay, thank you. And let's try it again. There we go. All right. So we can query again here and it says Jersey. Now I can query all the students again, or I can just pass the ID. So that will be this query here, where we say students and ID number 4. And now our document says it's still 4. Oh, hold on a second. I know why. Commit. Yes. This again, it happened to me twice. There we go. Jersey. Ta-da! So as you see, we continue to access the data, whether it's document or where is relational. Now, reading information as a document. Let's change that. Let's update. We'll see how. Well, let's update the grade of one of these students. So let's update Jersey. And the grade will be 10, but the ID is 4. So we make it a perfect 10, like this. And we can query that user again. And the document will show us that it has an average grade of 10. And if we go to the terminal and we select, now it's a 10, right? So the advantage here is now that with this, you have a running application of maybe it's long running, legacy, whatever, is relational. And you have been tasked to expose it now using documents. You don't want to duplicate the data. You don't want to restart everything again. You have backend processes that use SQL to generate reports and a bunch of things. You don't want to touch that. Leave them as it is. You can put the JSON relational view alongside and now expose your data through documents. And not only just for reading, but also back to writing as well and updates. That's the whole point of having this feature. And as you saw in the definition of the view, we can do it for just one table or can do it as many tables as needed. All right. Great. I think this is the last slide, as a matter of fact. So everything that I mentioned, it can be tried for free. Not everything is open source. The definition of the images that you saw from Gerald Benzel, they are open source. You can browse the script, so you can see there's nothing weird going on. But the software itself, the actual images are not open source because that contain commercial source. So for the first one, there is a website called freeoraclegithub.io. It's a list of many things, projects, products, guides, documentation, tutorials that Oracle has put out for free for all of us developers. The second link is where you can sign up for the free version of the Oracle database, or the Oracle Cloud and the Oracle database on the cloud, autonomous. The third one is the free version that you can run on-premise or containers. And if you want to test out these technologies and a few others, there is a set of workshops that we like to call live labs, that these things are run automatically on a tenancy of, it could be your own tenancy on Oracle Cloud, on something that spins off automatically for you. There's relationship with Apex and SQL Developer Web. So you have all these browser-based tools that allow you to do what the workshop itself, the steps that they provide. So there's plenty of information here, and all of these things. Again, not all of them are open source, but all of them are available to you for free. So this is what I have at the moment. So I thank you very much for your time, and if there are any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
All right. Any questions? Oh, Mr. Bill.
What's this technology called?
The name of this feature is JSON Relational Duality View. And it's only available from version 23 AI and onward.
Anybody else? I need the exercise. Yeah.
So Mike didn't mention that Andres has got a book out on Griffin, and I realize that could be another 1-hour talk, but could you give an overview of what Griffin is all about?
Yes, so Griffin is a framework for creating desktop applications that I co-created with 2 other friends back in 2008. If you take the ideas of Rails, or what it used to be known as Groovy on Rails, and remove HTTP and put in Swing and later JavaFX, that's basically what Griffin is. And version 1.0.0 came out, I think, in 2010, I believe. And the book Griffin in Action came out in 2012. Yes, and the last release that was posted was 4 years ago, I think. So it's not actively developed anymore, sadly. There are other things that I'm working on currently. One of them happens to be JReleaser, the release automation tool.
Yeah, there was a presentation on Griffin, but it was quite a number of years ago, back when the old days when we were under the old computer club. But yeah, any other questions? So yeah.
Do you need a dedicated server to run the JSON Duality View on top of the SQL database?
No, you just need the database. And for this, you can run it on the cloud, on-premise, or on a container. And this database has been proved to run as a small device as a Raspberry Pi. So yeah, it can grow as much as you want, or it can go as tiny as a Raspberry Pi.
Does it add any overhead or like any significant overhead?
No.
No?
So there's little to no overhead when we do the mapping within JSON and relational, because this is one of these features that is one of the flagship features for this release. So we really pay attention to performance for this one.
And my last question is, I think like at the beginning you talked about supporting all different kinds of databases. It looks like this one is primarily between relational databases and document databases.
That's what we started with, correct. And again, that's the reason why the keywords is separate, is create JSON space relational view, such that in the future we may do create XML relational view or duality view or whatever, because we would like in the future support other formats. But this will be, if and when we do this, is based on customer demand. So if there are a lot of people that really require and would like to use this with XML or other documents, then we'll certainly do so. We start with JSON because almost everybody uses JSON.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes,
Oh,
we have
here
two in
go.
the front.
I just want to know, like, do we need to add any dependency, like in Gradle file or in the, if I'm having Maven, like in pom.xml?
If you need any additional dependency just to talk to JSON relational
Yes,
duality view,
correct.
no.
No?
No, because these are available just directly talking to the database as just regular SQL.
Okay.
There is no additional jar or any other Java-specific dependency to talk to this, because if there was, we'll have to do the same thing for JavaScript and Go and Python and every other language that we would like to support for this. There's nothing external to the database that you need to configure in order to use this feature.
Okay, thank you.
So speaking of Raspberry Pi, a thing that occurred to me, a comment is distinct from, say, DynamoDB. This thing can scale, whereas Dynamo, there are limits to how much data you can put in, and apps can't really grow beyond a certain point. So that's really key and beautiful. So thank you.
Yes, Oracle scales.
Anyone else? Oh, okay. I was going to do the going once, twice, three times, but you.
I'm just curious because I've been a big MySQL user over many years. Does Oracle have this on MySQL too, or is it just on their Oracle releases?
For now, it's only on their Oracle RDBMS.
Okay.
So obviously, MySQL is also within the same roof as the Oracle database. I'm working for the Oracle database group, which has a relationship with MySQL, but there are two different teams. It's our hopes that MySQL and the others will adopt a feature like this.
Okay, great. All right. Anyone else? Anyone on YouTube, Barry?
Great presentation, thank you.
Ah,
That's what
okay.
it says on YouTube.
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right, great. So I wanted to mention one of the other cloud offerings. It's Payara Cloud. So since I've been working with Payara, I wanted to mention that as an option. So free 15-day trial. So in any event, yeah. So don't anybody leave just yet. Can you put the
Slides.
slide? Yeah.
Yes.
So what I'm going to do is in this, my quest to perfect this electronic sign-in process, I got to try to do this where we can do this at the beginning somehow. But so what I'm going to do at the moment is put the QR code. If you wouldn't mind signing in, please, and we can put you in for the raffle. Unless you've won one more recently, please do so. It's good to keep attendance as accurate as possible. I know we lost a couple of folks during the presentation, but yeah, please do so. And while that's up, I'll mention what's coming up for us over the next few months first. Next month, we have Ken Rimple of Honeycomb, formerly of Chariot Solutions, who we've worked with a few times over the years. And he'll talk about OpenTelemetry and Spring Boot. There's a longer title. It's on the website. So, and then in May, we have Phil Chung also from Oracle. And he's going to talk about RAG. I keep forgetting what the R stands for.
The retrieval augmented generation.
That's it. And I knew the other part. So yeah, so again, and then we're working on the date for that and to finalize that. In June, we have Elliot Rusty Harold, who's been with us a few times over the years. I want to say since like 2006, 2007 timeframe. And he's actually working on something called bug-free code. So that should be interesting. If you've ever seen Elliot speak, you'll know what I mean. And then July, just, fresh, new, breaking news, as it were. Billy Carando will come back with us. If you were here last year, he talked about the JDK flight recorder. So he has a few options available. He's working on a new AI presentation. I don't have the abstract yet because he's still putting that together. Otherwise, there's a few others that we can select. So stay tuned for that. That'll be July 9th. That's on a Wednesday. Other than that, I've talked to a few folks at DevNexus last week to try to and to encourage them to come out and visit with us. So we'll work with them and get that done. Don't know. Last year we were going to skip August and we wound up having 2 talks. So I'm not going to commit to whether or not we. So
there's one thing I want to say. Closing down. If you can take 3 things home from this session, the first one is use test containers. The second one is you can use the database for free, and there are multiple options. And the third one is obviously the JSON relational duality view.
And Jay releasing. So now that we have that, let me go back and real quick go through some of this. I talked about the upcoming events. Generally, this Thursday, Azul is hosting a 30th birthday of Java event. It's at 9 a.m. It looks like it's Pacific, so it's noontime for us here. You can go online and sign up for that. I don't have the URL here, unfortunately. And then Java 1 is next week. Barry, myself, Chandra will be out there for that. That ought to be. Oh, I'm sorry about that, Scott. We would have had Scott with us, So okay, we'll do that. That's a lot going on that week. So I'll report on that next month. And then some of the talks, Gene was here last month. And then Chandra will present, and I'll present as well on Helidon. Don Rab, are you going to be there? Oh, awesome. What's your talk? Data frame. All right, awesome. So that's that. And then Arc of AI, which is at the end of the month into early April, is in Austin. I believe Venkat may have already run the drawing, the random drawing. So stay tuned for the winner of that for our group. That's that right there. You can use Garden State as a discount code for $50 off your registration. All right, QCon London is obviously in London. That's in early April. I'll be out there, my first time in London. I'm looking forward to that. And I'll be serving as a dedicated reporter, so I'll be quite busy. And then something new that came to my attention is from Jonathan Schneider, who you may remember was with us 2 years ago, talking about open rewrite. There's a conference called Code Remix Summit. It's in Miami, so in case you want to go down in May, it might be a nice time of year to be in Miami.
My birthday.
So, what's your birthday?
One of those days is my birthday.
Oh, nice. You should go. So then there's a 75% discount for that. I don't know what the registration fee is, but that's a pretty sizable discount. Actually, that is an artifact of copy and paste and not editing correctly. So I got to fix that. Oops, where are we? Okay, there we go. And InfoQ Dev Summit Boston is in June of this year. So you can see where I did the copy and paste, right? And then there'll be QCon San Francisco, InfoQ Dev Summit Boston. There'll be KCDC. Those are way down the road a little bit, so I didn't put them on here. And I talked about what we're going to be doing, so I'll skip that. And then I quickly go through some of our friends of other Java user group that are our friends. So the Miami folks and the Philly Jug had their meetings tonight as well. So you can see that on there. Tomorrow night, Andres mentioned that he'll be up in Boston, and you're going to talk about releasing easy and fast and consistently. So I guess that's JReleaser related?
That's JReleaser and software supply chain
Okay.
security as well.
Neat. And then Chicago has Pratik, who we all know is one of the organizers of DevNexus. And then that's on Thursday, this Thursday. And also on the 19th, Chicago has Pasha, I guess that's Finkelstein, I think, if I pronounced that correctly. And Central Iowa, they have a Java roundtable going on the 20th. And then we got Kansas City Jug, has Phil Hodges talking about securing your Spring AI workflow at scale. And Atlanta has, in May, enhancing developer productivity with Backstage. And
When is the next New York Java conference?
no, it's not actually.
There's one in March, and I don't remember when that is.
They mentioned on the site, it should be August, I think.
No, there'll be one in April.
Yeah, specifically as Barry.
March,
Right, yeah. So, all right, so, last month, Jared Simonetti, who gave the Student Lightning talk, won the IntelliJ idea. So, I'll run that, when I get home. And then I'd like to do that real time. And like, again, this is part of perfecting this process and doing it real time so you can actually see. So we'll get there.
Yeah.
20, I'm sorry.
It says-
Oh, okay. Thank you. All right. See, we have all these editors in the audience here. That's a
It's a good thing, right?
Thank you for catching that. So, yeah. Oh, and then you saw this already. And then, of course, we end with the AI-generated image that Barry put together. My love for craft beer and Barry's love for chocolate. And there you go. So folks, we'll see you April 15th for Ken Rimple's talk. Thank you for coming out tonight. We really appreciate your support. And we'll see you next month. And I'll be a little bit jet lagged because I'm coming home the 14th from England. Am I gonna what? Break the? I don't know. I gotta. Okay. I'll think about it, Scott.
Don't run. Just I have
yes.
a few giveaways from Oracle.
Oh, you have a.